1986, New York City. A few months before Bill Buckner burned a hole in history by fumbling a routine ground ball and costing the Boston Red Sox the World Series that year, I had my initiation into the New Age and the occult. My Italian immigrant grandparents settled into Park Slope, Brooklyn during the baby boom of post-World War II life in the United States. My mother grew up in the counterculture explosion of the middle class during the 60s and 70s, with places like Greenwich Village less than an hour train ride from her house. In the summer of 1986, I was brought to this square you're looking at called Barter Pritchard Square. It's literally right around the corner from where my mom and her family lived in Park Slope, Brooklyn. And we went to this woman's apartment. She held a seance. I didn't know anybody there other than my mother. And it was my introduction to a whole other world. We were seated in her living room, forming a circle as our host sat in a meditative position, quiet for a moment. Then she began to speak to each of us, one by one. When she got to me, she said in a shrill voice that my guardian angel was an elf and that I would travel and practice law. That summer, anything seemed possible as I went back to West Virginia, where I lived with my dad during the school year when I wasn't visiting my mom in New York. In the aftermath of the seance experience, I graduated to a series of books that opened my eyes to another layer of history and the occult in a way that I would never come close to learning about in a public school.
Mystic places, psychic phenomena, unnatural experiences, all sources of fascination and speculation. Now read Mystic Places, the book that helps unlock the secrets of the ages. What are the signs of a lost land reappearing? Was this an ancient spaceship runway used by aliens? Read Mystic Places, free for 10 days. Keep it for $12.99. Other volumes will follow from Mysteries of the Unknown, the Time Life series that sold over 2 million books.
Following the echoes of the awakening that took place for me in 1986, I did not return to further explore the Bohemian counterculture until the summer of 1994. The rites of passage that season included attending my first pagan festival called Starwood in upstate New York, as well as the Woodstock '94 reunion concert with some of the original performers like Melanie, Arlo Guthrie, and Richie Havens. These catalyzing events, in tandem with exploration of psychedelics, turned my world even further inside out. It took another 10 years before the next season of counterculture-fueled metamorphosis took place. I had gone as far as my bohemian ways could take me, and at 24, I started life over, leaving my world in Ohio behind, and starting anew at my family's home in Brooklyn, right around the corner from where I attended the seance in the 80s. But before I can explain the next awakening, I have to backtrack in the story. Looking back now through the eyes of an adult 35 years later, I can see it as premonition, an omen, and foretelling of one of the most powerful journeys I've embarked upon thus far. It was the theme song of the show that haunted me for so many years. Those opening bars at the beginning of each episode were like a national anthem for my imagination. I remember sitting on the floor in front of a brown and battered television, mesmerized in cross-legged obedience. In 2006, I found myself 2 years plus deep into a new chapter of life. I had given up my world in the small-town city of Cincinnati, leaving my friends, familiarity, connections, romantic relationship, for a new beginning in the Big Apple by way of Brooklyn. Life for me had become an office job in Manhattan during the 9-to-5 world. Much of my time outside the working stiff life was spent exploring all that I could of what New York City had to offer in a pre-COVID, post-9/11 world. However, there was something in me that continually echoed a definitive dissatisfaction with my life, in spite of the material stability and relative peace I had in that time. I had been sitting on an Italian passport earned through dual citizenship that my mom and I qualified for due to her parents immigrating to New York from Italy in the 1950s. So for about 2 years, the passport and thoughts of Europe would routinely burn a hole in my imagination. I decided to fortify my resources for going abroad by taking a course in the city to become certified as a teaching English as a second language instructor, or commonly known as TESOL. I completed the course between 2005 and 2006 and was invited by the teacher to partake in an apprenticeship that took place in the following summer of 2006 at the Sunnyside Community Center in Queens, a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood in those days. One day that summer after class, I was sitting with the program director in her office. After explaining my idea of going to Spain with the Italian passport, one of her former students sitting with us interrupted and said, "Oh, don't go to Madrid. You would love Barcelona." Some powerful intuition within me immediately responded favorably to her suggestion, and I knew from that moment I was destined to go to Spain. But there was another event in my life that summer that gave me the conviction to push myself over the edge and into the unknown. One of my great friends from high school was an eccentric intellectual named Scott. We survived the cultural drought of Ohio, growing up in safe suburban seclusion and sharing an avid interest in music and counterculture. The Doors and Jim Morrison were at the top of our totem pole in the pantheon of our immortal rock heroes. In late July of 2006, it was the beginning of the work week, and I was in the city typing away the morning at a data entry gig. Scott and I had not spoken for a few months, so I thought, why not reach out to see what was going on in his world? I sent him a text that said, "Do you remember when we were in Africa?" citing one of our favorite lines from a Doors song. He didn't have my number in his phone. He replied back, "Who is this?" So I wrote my name and I told him he should come to Spain with me this fall. He told me he could not go, to which I responded, "Well, you never know what could happen." To which he agreed in one word, "True." That was his last message, and that was the last time I ever heard from Scott. On Saturday that week, I got a call while walking around the Lower East Side in the early afternoon. It was a mutual friend who Scott and I grew up with. He told me Scott was apparently a victim of a deep depression, which led him to taking his own life. Nothing he said in the text messages earlier that week alluded to what was going on with him. The magnitude of the timing shook me to the core. I knew I had to do something tremendous in the name of life, because in a sense I felt like I was in the same place, and some kind of depression of feeling empty and devoid of purpose. It was an intersection of life where a deep-seated intuition knows if significant change is not made, there will be adverse consequence. In early September, I made my way to JFK Airport in Queens, weighted down like a packed mule with luggage. The flight put me in an adrenalized mania as the closer we got to Barcelona, the realization of what I had done was quickly replacing my sense of excitement. I had taken a one-way plane ticket to another country where I did not know anyone, did not have a job prior to arrival, lacking both basic fundamentals of the native language as well as financial stability. The distinct feeling of being fucked began to creep over me. After landing in Barcelona, I had about an hour train ride ahead of me to calm down as the passenger car gently lurched side to side, slowly barreling down the train tracks toward the city center. I emerged from the metro station for Plaza de Catalunya, confused and blinking against the late morning sunshine, like a subterranean mammal beholding the first light of spring after a long hibernation. I could only gawk for a moment before I realized I had to get to my destination, so I jumped in a cab and headed to the address of the room I rented online, correspondence that originated from a Craigslist ad. Well, I was officially on my way, and it was like landing on another planet, and my evolution was about to take flight.